Sunday morning, phones ring, Bob Edgerton, team manager, goes, mate, can you come down to the team room? You've been cited for an incident in the game. I just want to run through it with you. And I'm like, I put the phone down. I'm like, what? I had literally no idea what they were talking about in terms of incidents. So I've been cited. I'm like, what for? And I said, what for? And he goes, oh, potential stamp during the first half. And I'm like, I have zero recollection of what he was talking about.
We can roll it in, Trav, the overlay. That normally will happen is the citing commission will go to the broadcast truck and say, I need these incidents from these moments.
Yeah, it was not informed. The citing commissioner was not informed till late. I don't know what the process was, but we didn't. Well, no one had mentioned to me, and we obviously tied out. You don't get, Morgs, these tests, you don't get back to the hotel till at least midnight.
Yeah.
Like by the time you do everything, your family's at the hotel, so you have a drink, and everyone, you're sitting around and talk to them. I wake up at 6, get a phone call at 6:30, being informed. So that was the first I'd been told about. How early our guys had found out about, whether that was earlier or later, but that was the first I was made aware of.
So what happens then?
So then there's a judiciary process I undertook. I believe it was the Monday. I'm trying to work it. So Sunday, we travel to Melbourne. You have a judiciary process. The judiciary officer was based in New Zealand. So that was all via, back then, Zoom and Teams wasn't a thing. So it was all via telephone. So we're in the room, everyone's talking. I was still sitting there, you give your bit, the Lions had written their whole press. They were even calling Lions players in to get their version of events while I'm sitting in the judiciary. I don't know whether that's above board or not, whether that should be.
Hang on a second. So they were calling players in.
So
what players are they calling? Are they calling players who are in and around the ruck?
Yeah, so they called Alwyn Jones, obviously, who was the...
Can we see the
player
again, please,
the incident? Who I allegedly or reportedly stomped on. Tom Croft, I think, was the other one who was in and around the ruck.
Okay. So they're calling in players to basically testify against you or for you?
No, not to testify, but say their version of the incident.
Right. But so, who in that can get any citing on you anyway? They're all got their heads down like you had yours down.
So, yeah. I mean, that was... there was... Because they write a written thing and they've got a full of what happened, who they're seeing, when the player got tricked. Like, it's a full dossier of what goes through. So that was read through. I'm sitting in there now. I don't know whether this was my first ever judiciary appearance, by the way. So I've never done it before. So I wasn't sure whether that was what happens or what doesn't. But they were calling in players. They had their legal counsel from the Lions. So Lions, interestingly, are the only team, in my understanding, in World Rugby that travel with a full-time legal counsel. So in the we went through it. It would have been at least 2 hours in the hearing itself, and then because there was so much media speculation around it, because it had all blown up, I had to then wait in like a little holding cell because all the cameras were outside in the hotel, and they didn't want me to go out until the verdict's been given. So the judiciary officer had asked to deliberate on his own with everyone out the room. Fine, even though he's on the phone and there was, other, scribes and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sitting in a room, just a small room attached to a business centre. Would have been for a couple of hours. Like I had to have my dinner and just sort of sit there and wait until the decision was made. And then obviously got the all clear, go back in, told clear, free to play, no citing, no sanction. And look, I think overall, if you look at it, the charge was it was intentional stamping, not accidental contact. Now, by the video, I obviously did clip Alwyn Jones in the head. My view, and I still stand, I had no idea I did it. It was a complete accident, and it just happened that it happened. And that was my defence. That's what I said to them. And I said, look, guys, I'm not arguing the fact that he stood on. He said he got stood on. He had a cut below his eye. That's what it was. I was just saying, I had no idea, and it was not intentional. It was a complete accident.
Your eye line is not at his head at any moment.
No, because I can't see.
Did you have other cameras? How did you set that up? Did you ever? You never had sight on his head on the ground.
Probably the loser. We did a demonstration. So Robbie, who was in there with us as well, we did a demonstration. So I'm basically there pushing, and as I raise my right foot to push, like to drive through the counter ruck, the ruck gets hit and I spin. And so as you spin, the mechanics of your foot just goes back to where it was, because everyone's like, oh, you've gone back and you've intentionally kicked in sort of like you're hooking for a ball. But if your body spins and you're bringing your foot down, it just went back that way. But my face is on the back. I think it's of Adam Jones, actually. Like, I'm not looking. I didn't know anyone was anywhere. So I had no knowledge of it.
Just quickly before we move on to the second test, this is peak Twitter, 2013.
Yep.
This is Facebook. Instagram, not so much. How much backlash did you cop from the Northern Hemisphere? What toll did it take on you, and how did you deal with it ahead of that game in Melbourne?
Well, I just turned off all social media. It started once it was sort of announced that there was this, because obviously no one reported about it after the game. It was not anywhere. It was not till it was brought up and said...
Yeah, so there was no replay in the match.
No replay, nothing. No one raised anything, not even after the game.
So he doesn't get up going,
In the presser after the game, there was no questions about it, because usually when things like that happen, obviously the media are looking at things and they would have brought it up. There was nothing. Not a single word about it until the next morning. Then it's obviously released that, hey, you've been cited, they've got to do a formal release. And then it was just the footage had shown, and then it was just a complete pile-on, really. And I just turned it all off. I mean, I remember I looked at it when it first released and it got a bit heavy, and I said, I'm not going to deal with this. So I just turned it off.
Yeah.
And just I was off Twitter for, I can't remember, Twitter and Instagram. I can't remember when I went back on it.
What about Alan Wynne-Jones? When did you talk to him? What was your relationship like those couple of days, or the next game?
No, I didn't speak to him at all. Obviously played the next game. He was skipper of the third test. So there was no ill will there. It was just, he just happened to be the guy that was there. He was obviously in the hearing, and there were some things that went on during the hearing that were just, I had a different view of what happened, but that's the reality of it. And ultimately, all I was concerned about, I got cleared and I can get on with playing, because we had a test to win, and that was my huge focus.
We had your back, mate. Swanee and I had your back all those years ago. We had a little bit more hair, a little less around the midriff.
Did you start the Justice for Kevy
we
hashtag?
Started Justice for Horwill. We also tried to launch the Bring Back Bod, because we just wanted to watch O'Driscoll play. He got punted by Gatlin. We just wanted to watch him play. We wanted to watch him play as well. So second test, we move ahead after you've taken shots everywhere across the week in the lead up. We're under the roof down in Melbourne. Let's start at the 60th minute, because it's a dull game. It's a dour game.
Just to go back on that, what happens is I got cleared, then just before the second test, the IRB at the time, so not World Rugby, so the current World Rugby, appealed their own decision.
What?
But they appealed it so late in the process, which apparently was within the required time frame. I didn't know that there was a required time frame. Didn't know this was a thing, right? They appealed their own decision. So because it was so late, they didn't want to disrupt my ability to play the test, because they couldn't pull a judiciary and another appeals court together in time before the test. So I went into that test knowing that they'd appealed their own decision, and I'd only found out before that no appeal that they'd ever gone through had got off it second time. So every appeal that they'd ever had of their own decision had always been found guilty the second time. So that happened, I think it was the Thursday night. I get told again by Bobby, he goes, mate, and explain this. I'm like, how is that even possible or allowed? I didn't even know it was a thing, so it wasn't till then. So that's probably the lead in going into that game.
So you're playing thinking that you're cooked, basically.
Well,
you're playing the decider.
I think they'd only ever appealed the severity of decisions. They'd never appealed a decision.
Right.
No. Like they'd appealed, I think Adam Thompson the year before.
Yeah, he got 1 week and then got 3 weeks instead.
Yeah, they appealed the severity and wanted it to be a tougher sentence.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd ever appealed an innocent verdict.
No.
Oh.
And so they bring in some poor Canadian.
Yeah, so we can touch on that if we're going chronologically. But that was what happened before the second. So I'm going into the second test going...
We're not going to talk much on the third, don't worry. That never happened.
Nine times out of... Like, I'm thinking in my head, mate, I just need to get... This is it. Because basically, no matter what happens here, I'm likely not going to be playing the third test.
Gotcha.